Hey, so we're going to cover how do we style this default unordered list and make it look like an actual navigation, because we want to keep the structure of a list, but we just don't want it to look like that. One thing to note in the last video, when I was displaying how wide our container was, 1140 pixels, I just thought it looked a little too wide. I have a very large 32-inch screen here. And I forgot that I have actually zoomed in on the browser window here so we can kind of have a clearer view of it. So this is really what it would normally look like. I just thought it did look a little too big, and it shouldn't be filling the whole screen like that. So that gives you a little bit of perspective. But again, I do that because we want to really focus in and see what we're working with. So I hope that helps, but just wanted to clarify that. So I haven't really gone through and prepared like the steps or whatever that we're going to take, because I feel like a lot of training and online tutorials and videos, they do that. They already have it all prepared and it's just perfect. Wouldn't it be nice to just watch an actual developer approach this without any help, right? So I just want to go into this with a fresh, open mind, see where I struggle, see what I get stuck on. I don't know that normally I've kind of got like my own normalize, and it has all of my list and list items already set to go for me, so I don't have to worry about doing that every single time. So it'd be kind of fun to just see, how do I approach this? How would I do this? And we can learn along the way together. So that's kind of the purpose of these videos, just keep them more raw and natural, and learn together. So let's go ahead and do that. So where would I begin? Well, first thing I notice, we've got our unordered list, we have our list items, and then we have our links. So there's no real right or wrong way to do this. People ask, do you start with the CSS first? Do you start with the markup? In this case, since we already have the markup, that is what I typically like to start with. I like to write, what is the structure? What's the skeleton of my blocks going to look like and be? And then I'll add classes to each of these, so that way my styles can apply to them. So why don't we go start here in our markup. And yeah, so I'm going to just zoom this out maybe one level here so we can kind of see it all. So what I would do is I would normally grab each one of these elements and add a class, and including our links here. So all right, first thing I like to do as well, I just selected all of these. This is how I like to write markup that starts getting really long inside of each element. Oops, I did not mean to do that. I just wanted to have this last one. And then I like to have spaces between all of the children. And then the very last and the very first don't have any spaces. So that way it kind of keeps to know what children do I have in here, what am I working with. If there was more markup inside of here, then I would also indent and space out and wrap the links. What I mean by that, if there was like a span in here, then I would then come and break this down onto a new line as well. So that way I can see everything that's nested inside of the parent, right? So, all right, so we have that. Now what we want to do, I want to add a class to each one of these. In fact, we don't really need this right now. So what we could do is just, what I'm doing is I'm holding Control and then clicking with my mouse to add cursors on each one of the elements. And so one thing that I already kind of blew it, I don't know what my parent's going to be, but in this case, it's going to be the navigation. We could just call it maybe nav for short. And this is the link, so I'm going to just name it nav link. So what that would mean for me, since we're doing them, is I'd want my class, I guess I could put this here just in case. We'll just call that nav. Then I also want a class here. And then I also want a class on all of these. And these are children of nav, so this will also be, we'll call this a nav item. And this will be a nav list, say, right? So here's our list. These are individual items in the list. These are all the links. So you might think, golly, why are we writing so many classes? Well, it might seem like a lot, but later on down the road, when we're doing another style of some lists, this will all be very specific to our nav, and it keeps our CSS super clean and a lot more flexible. And then we don't run into problems with our what we call specificity. So, all right, we've got those. So let's grab this. This is where I'll start. I don't have really anything that I want with this nav. I forgot in the last video we didn't actually save this. So we can get our grid template columns here and set them to 2. Actually, what we did this, I believe. Pixels. Okay, so there's that. This is more of our global stuff, so we'll actually want to keep that more up here alongside our color scheme. And I like to document everything, right? So like our logo, the logo is down inside of the header. And then this here, you can say something like this, like, all right, here's our header. So I know where that starts. And this would be like our nav. Okay, so I just did something I don't typically ever do. I don't know why I decided to do this. Mostly because I know why I did this. So I don't normally abbreviate like this. I hate abbreviations. It just makes it, when you get into some of the 3-letter words, what are you really talking about? I did it for this purpose, for this video, because normally my code is like this, right? So I can actually read everything. I just thought maybe I'll just abbreviate it for this video so I can still be zoomed in so you see it. Maybe that's not a great idea. So how would I fix this, okay? So how are we gonna fix this? I'll take it like this. We'll search for all of them, and then we'll come here, navigation, and we'll just do this. So if you see that there's some quick things you can do with these editors, I didn't want to search for nav because that was short for actual element. So now we'll come here, and we've got our dot navigation here. And now I need to copy this because we're going to have our navigation list. We're going to have our navigation item. And what I'm doing here is Control-Shift-D. That's on Windows. I don't know if there's other shortcuts for Mac, but well, I know there are. I just don't know them off the top of my head. So we have item, list, and then link. So this kind of separates it. Now you can take it a step further and comment your code and be like, okay, well, this is, the list is a UL. You can comment this, and this is, you know, an LI, and this is our link. But if we're clever and we're smart with our naming, if I name it with a link, I know, well, hey, I obviously know that this is going to be a link tag. An item maybe isn't super clear that it is a list item. UL. So in SAS, I always like to document it with comments. In my CSS, I don't really typically write a whole ton of native CSS because I'm sure there's ways to strip out comments on that too. But usually when it gets all minified, all that goes away. This is just for us humans, so that way we can quickly read what this element is and what it does. So that's how I'd start. That's how I'd start to break it out. We've got it on the side. The next thing I'd look at, once all of our classes and structure and stuff is set up, is I would come here and look at our UL. So immediately we've got some green and we've got some orange on the top and bottom. And if we look here, we have what's called our user agent style sheet. And that is all the defaults that the browser gives on this element. In this case, what Google Chrome is giving us. Now, in other browsers, it might be a little slightly different. The margin or the padding might not exactly be 40. I don't know. We could go check and look, but that's why we have what's called those browser resets, right? That's kind of what that normalize does, is zero all this out and gives us more of a uniform element to work with. But notice here, normalize doesn't even have any UL element. Okay, so we would have to go add that ourselves. So that's another reason why I like rolling your own, because you're not reliant on this other thing that may or may not work for your project. But we'll start to see more and more of these examples as we go through. So first thing I would do is I'd want to zero it all out, right? I don't want anything controlling the margin. I want to do that myself later. So I'd come here on our unordered list, and I would just say margin 0, and I'd also say padding 0. That's a great start. What does that do? Ooh, that's kind of rough. What's happening here? Well, now we're finally removed all the spacing from this element, and now our grid, there's no gap there, right? And then our list items, all these little dots that are on these lists, they're just sticking out and off to the side here. So that's no good. So I had to do this. I mean, everyone has to go through this, right? Like, how do we get rid of those little dots, and what are they even called? And the majority of the time, you're going to have to search for how to remove dots from an LI. So that would be a great example for us as beginners, like how to remove those dots on a LI tag, right? If I didn't know anything about this. So you kind of have to find some things, right? So here looks like something, CSS class, so list style none. Okay, so if I was a pure beginner, knew nothing about this, I guess I could just take this and copy it and see what happens, right? Apply this here, save. Well, hey, that did the trick. Now, the difference between a great developer and maybe just an average developer would be like, I found my answer and I copy pasted it and it worked, and I didn't look any further. I didn't even click into any of these items, okay? Not good. That's not what we want. The purpose isn't just to quickly find your answer and move on. How do we know that we didn't type something wrong here? How do we know that there isn't some other thing? So if you look, when I hover over here in my editor, shorthand for setting list style type, list style position, list style image. So do I want this shorthand? Is that good? Is that bad? Should I have typed it like this? Right? So lots of questions arise. Is this the proper place? Can I put this element somewhere else? Can I put it here and will it work? Let's find out. Looks like it works there. So see what I mean? So we don't want to just grab things and pretend like we know it and it solved our problem. Let's dig in. Let's get a little further. Let's find some resources, check a few different links, and figure out why something does something else better. In this case, this is a little bit more specific. And what will actually happen is if you put it on the parent element, and this doesn't work with all types of CSS, but in this case, for this particular one, if we put it here on the parent, all these children LIs will inherit that type. So what I mean by that is if I put like a font size here of like, we'll just really crank it up. We'll put it at 50 pixels. What's going to happen? All of our list items inherit from the parent. So if I put our font size here to maybe 10 pixels, what do you think is going to happen? Well, of course, these are going to shrink down because this is on the element and it's going to override our parent. So that's kind of how the CSS cascade works, okay? Kind of interesting. So that was a good learning example. I don't think I would have normally thought to cover that until we really dove in here and did this. So how would I like to do it? I typically like to put my font size and stuff on the actual element that needs it, and I only like to rely on inheriting styles that make sense. Like this is probably good to have it inherit. The more things you can have inherited, probably the better. But sometimes with list items and links, we want to be more specific. Like I would even go as far as to put the font size of our elements on the link itself and leave all the other styling to other things. So yeah, something to think about. Okay, so well, what's the next step here? I don't want to create a super long video. Maybe I will just end it here, and then we can talk about how do we get this, aligned, how we can style our links and start making these look a little bit better. So the goal for me is to create shorter videos for you, more bite-sized, and hopefully something to kind of think about as we get to the next stage. So, all right, hope you found that interesting, and we'll cover more later. All right, bye.